Welcome everyone to another edition of Bleav In Mavs, brought to you by the Bleav Sports Network. As always, I am your host, Mo Murphy, and your Dallas Mavericks are now in the Western Conference Finals after a Game 6 victory over the Oklahoma City Thunder, 117-116. And so to break down everything that happened last night in Game 6 and what this means for the Dallas Mavericks to be back for the second time in 3 years in the Western Conference Finals, I brought none other than my brother, president of the Off the Ball Network, host of the Off the Ball podcast, and also co-host of the Get a Bucket podcast, Chris LeBron. Chris, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Mo, man. You know, it was a great series to watch and all that. It kind of went how I predicted, so I'm excited to talk about this series.
Yeah, 100%. And like I said, I appreciate you for coming on. And I had the Mavs in 6 as well. So that was my prediction before the series. Obviously, the Mavs ended up winning in 6, so I end up correct. Now, if I talked about how this series would have went, if you would have told me PJ Washington and Derrick Jones Jr. will end up probably being the two most important pieces for this Dallas Mavericks team in this series to beat this Oklahoma City Thunder team, then I probably would tell you, all right, the Mavs probably aren't going to win this series. If Luka's banged up, maybe they'll have to see what this team looks like completely healthy after the second round next year. They beat the Clippers, so we know this team is pretty good. But that wasn't the case because PJ Washington was absolutely amazing in this series. Derrick Jones Jr., especially this 3-game stretch. And I gave him his flowers in the last episode, but his 3-game stretch in game 4, 5, and 6, 3 of the most important games in the series, the most pivotal games. I always have trouble saying that word. And Derrick Jones Jr. outdid himself every game. He has his playoff career high in game 4 with 17. Tops that off in game 5 with 19. And I think, what he have, 21 or 22 last night in game 6. So he in game 4, 5, and 6, he increased his playoff career high while also being a main part down the stretch yesterday in game 6. So watching game 6, what was a couple of your biggest takeaways before we really start talking about some of the sequences that led down to Dallas being able to win by 1? What was just some of your biggest takeaways in game 6 and the Mavs being able to go to the Western Conference Finals?
Just not giving up, man. Just being gritty. They got down bad and all that, close to 20 points and all that. And it was just all right, maybe there was some points in the game. I was like, hey, maybe OKC is just gonna, they're gonna take care of business and we're going to game 7. But Dallas just stayed steady. They, the bigs did their thing. And we had talked about this, for the series. I thought the bigs were the reason why I thought Dallas was gonna win, and the bigs came up huge and all that. PJ, Gafford, Derek Lively, he didn't look like a rookie today. He did his thing, but just getting timely good shots. They took some good shots. When you're down big, you tend to take a lot of threes and all that just to try to get back in the game. But they were taking mid-range shots, some deep mid-range shots too, but they were just taking good shots. They just want to see the ball get in, Luka, Jones and all that, Kyrie, they were taking shots that they know they can make. And that was kind of it. And they just, just stayed calm and cool. And that to me was the biggest thing, because this game could easily got out of hand, and OKC, we'll be talking about OKC, Dallas, game 7 in a few days. But they just stayed calm, cool, collected, played their game, made timely shots, and had some big defensive possessions and all that, and just did what they've done all series and all playoff long. So that was to me the biggest takeaway, is that they didn't get riled up when they got down bad. So that to me was the biggest thing. They just played cool, and that's why they won the game.
Yeah, to me, so everything you said about basically how they ended up coming back, they were down by as much as 17 at one point, but that had a lot to do with how they ended up down at 17 in the first place. There was a 5-possession stretch defensively from the Dallas Mavericks. 2 of those were 24-second violations. They forced 24-second violations on OKC. They forced OKC to take a shot with 1 second left on the shot clock. Then they forced OKC to take another shot with about 1 to 2 seconds. So they're causing so they were playing great defensively. And then I think on that 5th possession, they were stopping OKC, and OKC was able to slip a back screen. Happens 14 seconds into the play, but Dallas was playing elite defensively, but they also weren't coming back, especially in that 5-possession stretch, and scoring offensively. And that's where it seemed like OKC kind of took off a little bit. And that's where frustration started kicking in for Dallas, because even after that stretch, as great as they played defensively, when you're not able to get a bucket and you're playing so good, but you're down 2, and then you're down 4, and then you're down 7, and then you're down 10, while also holding them 22, 23, almost 24-second possessions offensively for OKC, but they're either able to score or you're just not able to come back and score. And so that kind of wears you down. And you could tell it wore down on them emotionally at that point of the game, because in game 5, Luka played so amazing because it was like he just hooped. Like he just played ball. He went into the game and said, I'm not going to worry about the refs or anything. And he just hooped. And so in game 6, when things started not going their way, Luka reverted back to basically antagonizing the refs, gets a tech. It looks like there's a point in time while they're double digits, Luka might get kicked out of this game. And at that point, you would almost think Dallas is going to concede and have to do it the hard way and win this game on the road in game 7. But after that stretch was when it seemed like the game started getting out of hand. Everything started becoming emotional with Dallas. The refs were making them pay for it. Some egregious calls after that. But one of those, send a message, stop complaining, just play ball. We'll do our job. You do your job, and let the flow of the game be the flow of the game. Once they got themselves together, though, you could tell they went into halftime. And this is where the game started for the Dallas Mavericks. Going into halftime, if you're an OKC fan, you were feeling great. They're coming. You feel like they're going to bring it back home. We can hold it down in the game 7. We got SGA, the guy who finished second in MVP. Like, there's a lot of reasons why you would believe in OKC if you were an OKC fan if this game goes 7. But you could tell Dallas goes into halftime and basically says, bro, we're not losing this game. And, you know, there were reports after, but like that were saying they went into halftime and that was the thought about it. But you see it. Like everybody can say, bro, we're not losing this game. And then you come out and finish losing by 30. And it was like, yeah, we tried to get motivated. But Dallas did. And they ultimately ended up coming out and winning the game. What was the biggest difference to you from the adjustment they made in the second half to the first half? Because I don't think there were really major adjustments, but what was the biggest adjustment for you that you saw for Dallas to be able to win in the second half as opposed to being down? I think what they go into halftime, down 10 or 12. I forget the exact score. Down 10 or 12, and then they got down as much as 17. But what was the difference for you on the outside looking in for what Dallas did in the second half to be able to get the victory?
Just stay composed. Like you said, it felt like Luka was just out of control and all that. And, you know, when he gets that way, it you know, you're probably thinking, all right, this game's gonna get out of hand. Luka's just doing too much, and he's known for that and all that. But you know, he just buckled down the second half. And if I ever tell you that Dallas's best player only took 15 shots, and at one point they were down 17, 18 points, you were probably like, oh man, they probably got throttled and all that. But that was the case. And just like I said before, they just stayed calm. They didn't let all the, you know, blown calls or whatever get you know, the best of them, which usually would happen with Luka. Maybe if this is a regular season game, but it didn't happen. Like they knew they had to buckle up, and they did that. The boards rebounding was their second chance. I think they throttled the Thunder at second chance points. I forgot the exact number or what it was, but and then that was why I thought Dallas would win, was because, and I've said this on my show and much other show, I was like, Dallas is rebounding and giving second chance points, getting the opportunity to get second chance points when you have a Kyrie and you have a Luka, is to me why I thought Dallas would win. And in this game in particular, it definitely showed, because they absolutely killed them on the boards, killed them in second chance points. And that's what happened in the second half, like I said. So I think that was a big state. They didn't make a lot of crazy adjustments and all that. You know, Kyrie's still trying to, you know, we haven't seen Kyrie he didn't go off this series and all that, but he still hit some big shots in the second half. You know, like I said, mentioned before, they just hit shots they knew they were going to make, so you'd see the ball go in and all that. But not a crazy adjustments, but they rebounded the heck out of the ball. The Lively was able to control the paint, you know, make Chet, you know, a little bit uncomfortable, make whoever's SGA, all these guys uncomfortable when they get to the bucket. And that was essentially it, and just hit timely shots and all that. And that to me was the biggest thing in the second half, and just staying calm. Like I mentioned before, they just stayed calm. They didn't get rattled, you know, with how it was in the first half, you know, with Luka and all that. And, you know, and they took care of business. But the rebounding to me was the biggest thing, man. And that's something with OKC they got to figure out, because they don't have a lot of big boys other than Chet. And Chet's not, Chet gets in foul trouble. It's tough for them. But, you know, with Dallas to have a rotation of bigs like that, like, and I mentioned, and we talked about this, the trade they made in the trade deadline, you know, it's the difference between them getting to the conference finals and maybe even getting to the finals than them, you know, being a play-in team or maybe not in the playoffs. Like that trade has solidified, like that's going to be talked about for a long time in Dallas, that trade might have saved and tanking too last year to
But
get Derek Lively, you know?
And real quick, you want to know the irony of the trade deadline and the events that took OKC helped facilitate all that. Like OKC could have had Gafford. Instead, they helped facilitate Dallas to get Gafford. OKC could have drafted Lively. Now I know Lively, Dallas traded back. And there was a point in time where if there was, I know during that draft, Dallas really wanted Lively. And if there was feelings that if they traded, like they would have just taken him at 10. But they traded back because that was the guy they wanted. They felt like he fit the mold and they'd be able to get him later. You know, he wasn't really being talked about until like that 17, 18, 19, 20 range. So Dallas was able to trade back out of 10. And OKC also helped facilitate that PJ Washington trade. So like 3 of the most important players in this series, one being a rookie, but the other 2 was basically also potential players that OKC could have had. Like OKC could have had PJ Washington at the trade deadline. Instead, they helped facilitate Dallas getting them. And then OKC ends up getting Gordon Hayward. And then like they could have had Daniel play. Right, but instead they helped. That will be the irony of those trades at this time, especially is because we ended up playing OKC in the second round and beating the team that helped facilitate the trades that almost basically was the reason why you had the advantage in that series and was able to win this series. And something else that like basically with you talking about Lively that I wanted to talk about, rebounding was a major factor, but it was Lively rebounding. Like you could tell that this is a rookie, right? And like one thing, if I ever got to talk to Derek Lively, I would love to ask him, what was it like being drafted to Dallas when you know, like, basically this team is probably telling you, like, look, we have big plans. We got Luka, we got Kyrie. We're going to need to make some moves, but bringing you, we are expecting you to be an immediate contributor to this team, and you're going to be part of this. We hope that you grow into being part of this rotation as soon as this year for the playoffs, and he's done that, and he stepped up, and he played absolutely amazing, especially in the second half. He refused almost to not get a rebound. And it showed because I think he ended up with 15, 16 rebounds. I'd have to look. It was a point in time he had 10 points. He had 15, he had 10 points, 14 rebounds. But Lively was on everything on the rebounding side. And Dallas in this series won the rebounding battle, offensive and defensive.
Rebound, yep.
You know what's the wildest thing to me with Dallas, though? And this is what is the Mavericks lost the turnover battle, but won the points off turnover battle. So, like, Dallas every game will have more turnovers, but Dallas will also have more points off of turnovers from OKC. So, I think that was another thing that if I look from OKC side is like they didn't capitalize off of turnovers. Dallas was giving you a lot of opportunities. Obviously, you were winning the turnover battle, having the least amount of turnovers every game, and Dallas was giving you a lot of opportunities, but they were able to capitalize every time you gave them an opportunity off a turnover, and I don't think OKC was able to do that. Now, you know, let's talk about Kyrie. Now, I want to ask you about Kyrie real quick, but here's my theory on why Kyrie was not unleashed in this OKC series. It seemed to me Jason Kidd kind of more was like Kyrie Irving's going to play a traditional point guard role. You're going to run an offense. You're going to play elite defense. And that's going to be your role for this team, at least for this series. I think part of that was for the simple fact Luka entered this series banged up. He's only gotten even more injured by the game. I mean, there was a point in time Luka stepping on the court, sprained ankle, sprained knee, bad back. Like, there's nothing that's not – and we're talking about sprains and stuff. We're not talking about, oh, he rolled his ankle, he should be fine the next game. Like, we're talking about things, if this was the regular season, Luka would be on the bench in street clothes and not be playing. So that's a cap to how tough he was in this series. But I think Jason Kidd kind of felt like all the advantages that they had, if everything is executed to perfection, we don't have to unleash Kyrie, and we can kind of save Kyrie for later in the playoffs. All you got to do, you take it series by series, and being able – you almost started seeing at points of time last night when Kyrie really started getting going that, hey, back's against the wall. We got to win this game 6. Put the ball in Kyrie's hands and let's see what happens. And it started happening, and then it opened up for once Kyrie get going, and then Derrick Jones Jr. hitting mid-ranges, PJ Washington being able to hit open threes in the corner. Like, now the offense is completely spread out, and that's why they were able to win last night. But I think Coach Kidd seen like the ailments, especially early on in the series of Luka, and was like, if we're going to keep winning and have any chance, we got to keep one of our scoring stars as fresh as possible. And if I have Kyrie in a role that he can succeed as an individual and we can succeed as a team in this series and be able to kind of keep him as fresh and healthy as possible for when we may need those scoring outbursts in the Western Conference Finals against a Denver or a Minnesota, which we'll see here tonight. who we're getting in the Western Conference Finals in this Game 7. But I think it was more of a preservation for Kyrie because you never get healthier later in the playoffs. Your Luka's banged up, and so if he's not going to get healthier, we need one of our star players being healthy. Is that like a off the rail conspiracy of what you saw of the usage of Kyrie? Like, would that make more sense to you than almost anything else that you could conjure up? Because a lot didn't make sense of how Kyrie was being used in this series, but it doesn't matter because you win 4-2, 1-6, and going to the conference finals anyway. It was just something I was analyzing while watching the series.
Yeah, I think it was just more of just the matchups and all that. Like, this was going to be a tough matchup for Kyrie, because of the length of the Oklahoma City Wings. So, So I just think that it was like, all right, we know that it's going to be tough for Kyrie and all that. So we need him to more to just be facilitator and all that. And, if our bigs do what they should do, then we don't need Kyrie to be Kyrie like he was in the Clipper series. He had a better matchups and all that because, they didn't really have, especially with Kawhi out and all that and just PG essentially being their best wing defender. They didn't really have, especially on switches and all that. It was going to be easy. It was going to be easier for him. But in this series, I knew this was going to be tough for Kyrie and all. But defensively, he stepped up. And
he stepped up major defensively, like time defensively, and that's why I say, like, it seemed like Kidd was giving him the you're going to play like a Chris Paul role for the team, which is we know Chris Paul is very important, especially in his prime. Like, we're not going to act like I'm not comparing it to a Chris Paul role for what he's been with the Golden State Warriors, but Chris Paul was always, even in his prime, like, you're going to run this offense, you're going to play good defensively, and if we need some scoring outbursts throughout the game, but you're going to hover around that averaging 22, and since it's Kyrie, he's not necessarily the passer that Chris Paul, you're going to hover around that 20 to 22 points, 5 to 7 assists a night. And so then you give a scoring outburst that lead to those 22 points that you finished with like last night. That scoring outburst that he had late in the third and in the fourth quarter basically ended up with his 22. I think he only had 3 assists, so he wasn't much of a facilitator, but he had the flow of the offense going. There were points at times when the offense looked stale, and it was like Kyrie got the ball going, swings the Gaffer swinging right back to PJ Washington, pump fake, one dribble, swing it back to the outside, Luka open for a 3. So there was a lot of things of just for the threat of what Kyrie can do with the ball in his hands and score. He was able to open up that offense. And so that's something I think Kyrie's impact on this series was more than the stat sheet.
Yeah, I think it definitely was. His leadership has gotten better too, and Lively. And I think that's why Lively has had a lot of success. Yeah, Kyrie's happy where he's at. Obviously, that's big, but just he trusts Lively. He doesn't, Lively, we know had struggled with free throws and all that, but he's like, no, big guy, we trust you with the ball. I'm going to give you the ball and you're going to be able to do some things. And I just think Kyrie's leadership, which has been, some people have questioned and all that, but I think since he's come to Dallas, it's really shown. And that's why the younger guys have been rocking with him, especially Lively, because he knew Lively's going to be an important piece for us if we want to get to where we want to go. And like you said before, yeah, he didn't score. We didn't see, the big scoring games, but he just knowing Luka trust him too. And if Luka trusts you, just to have the ball in your hand, yeah, you didn't have big scoring games, but just having the ball and Luka knows he can trust him and they can run some 2-man game together and all that. And just that just shows, Kyrie and what he can do on the court, his impact, even without having major scoring games. And he knew he was going to get tough matchups with Dort and Jalen and all these guys that OKC can run at him, Isaiah Joe, all these guys, Wiggins. But, he trusted the bigs and the bigs did their thing. And I think that was the biggest thing is yeah, we didn't need Kyrie to score major points, but we just trust him on the court. And that's big. You see with Luka. And then, like I said, it's been really good to see and all that. And that's why, Dallas is in the conference finals and all that. They took advantage of, the matchups they had with the bigs. And Kyrie saw that, especially early in the series, he was taking advantage. He facilitating. He was looking like the traditional point guard and all that. That they never saw that with Kyrie being a facilitator and all. But he's always had that in his game. It's just he's a bucket. So that's what you need for him. But that's what's good about Kyrie. You don't need that from him. You have Luka and all that. And if you got guys like PJ Washington hitting 5-6 threes a game and all that, I know he didn't score to the late in the second half, but he had some big shots today. But it's just the trust. When Kyrie's on the court, it's trust. And if Luka trusts you, that goes a long way and all that. And like I said, Kyrie's leadership has been huge, especially around the young guys and all that. So it's been he's injected some another another, injected some positivity in that team that they didn't have, last year and all that. And, before he got there, and, I knew this was going to work this year. I liked this Dallas team more than others and all that. And I knew they had to make some tweaks. They made some tweaks, and then the conference finals now.
Yeah, 100%. And like, here's the thing about this Dallas team. Like, before we talk about like the controversial call that Dallas was able to capitalize, hit the free throws, the PJ Watt, the Shea foul on PJ Washington. I want to talk about the narrative around Luka. Now, Luka he's in his second Western Conference Finals in the past 3 years. Like, just for context, he's playing in the conference finals again. Now, for these same type of runs that don't result in championships, who's a team that's gotten a lot of praise in the past 5 years, but hasn't fully getting it done? But we talk about him like he's an elite. Jimmy Butler, playoff Jimmy in the Miami Heat, right? So, but Luka is like, oh, he's not a winning player. He goes to the Western Conference Finals. The team is injured, depleted, so he misses the playoffs. They basically tank at the end of the season to be a lottery team. And then they're back healthy, make the tweaks. They're back in the Western Conference Finals. So this notion that like Luka is not a winning player, and I understand, like, my thing is, I don't necessarily say that a guy is a losing player unless he has a championship. Like, I don't think that makes you a loser. Like, only one team can win. Only one individual, MVP caliber player is going to win each year. So like, for you to not win the championship, and then everybody's argument back for trying to kill Luka is like, well, it's a participation trophy. No, but there's levels to success. The championship is the ultimate success, but to be to two Western Conference Finals in the past 3 years in the rough West, especially this year, like, that's nothing to bat an eye at. I think just Luka has been so amazing since he's been in the league. We talk about this guy like he's 30. This dude, now they're both 25, so he's younger than SGA. He's 8 months younger than SGA, though. Like, we talk about SGA like he's a baby in the league, and we talk about Jokic like he got miles on his treads like Steph. Like, he about to be 34, 35 and end his career on the Chris Paul note of probably not getting a championship. Like, that's the narrative around Luka. This dude is 25 years old. These Dallas Mavericks team is outside of Kyrie Irving. This team is 25 and under. They just as young. Their nucleus is dang near just as young as every other team. We talk about OKC and SGA and OKC in check. We talk about and Jaden McDaniels and NAW and all the young pieces that they got in Minnesota. And then Dallas is like, oh, well, Luka needs to do this. Look, he's 25 years old. Gafford younger. PJ Washington is younger. Like, the nucleus of that team outside of Kyrie Irving is almost just as young as the core of all these other teams. But Luka came in so hot, so quick. And so now they talk like he's a losing player. And like, to me, there's always pressure. There's always pressure. We want the Mavericks to get to the finals. But like, it's not an indictment on Luka. If the Mavericks were to lose in 6 or 7, like, that doesn't exemplify the fact of the people saying he's a losing player and can't play winning basketball. Like, you don't play losing basketball and get the Western Conference Finals in 2 of the past 3 years. I'm sorry. You just don't. And maybe 1 year's luck. I just don't think you get lucky twice, especially in the Western Conference, in 3 years being in the finals. And you didn't play the easier teams. You didn't play the banged up teams. So this notion that Luka's not a winning player, like, it can be deaded a little bit, right? Unless you are so focused on the only way a guy is a winning player is if he wins a championship.
Well, that's what it is. We only view if you win a championship as
they only do that for players that they don't like, because players that they do like that don't have one, like SGA, his time is coming. He's 25. Luka's 25. Luka ain't a winning player. SGA's time is coming. Like, there's a difference. Oh, they're not ready yet. Even Alex Caruso had said this Dallas team is what OKC thinks they're going to be, or is going to be in a couple years. Oh, so this team that's dang near the same age outside of Kyrie Irving as this OKC team, they are as good now as what you think this team will be 2 to 3 years from now when SGA is in his final form at 28, 29 years old. But like, Dallas is that right now. So it's just this notion that like, it's Luka, like, it's a Luka hate. This notion that he's not a winning player, and it'll be amplified for the people that say that if Dallas doesn't go on from this Western Conference Finals and go on to the finals, basically end up winning a championship, like, oh, he could do everything but win a championship. But like, he's kind of deaded that, as far as he at least deserves to be more than like, oh, it's not winning basketball.
Yeah,
Like,
that's all silly stuff.
and
Like,
that's what you like. I said all that, and it's like, like that's
yeah,
fun.
it's just all silliness and all that. Like, like at the beginning of the season, it's like, oh, Kyrie's gonna ruin the team and all that, blah blah blah, and Luka can't be a winning player, and like we're putting a timeline. Oh, is he gonna get traded? It's all just nonsense. Like I said, it's pick and choose. Like we did, both these guys were in the same class, right? SGA and Luka and all that, and you know, somehow SGA gets more of the pass, and Luka somehow is this losing type of player. And meanwhile, 2 out of 3 years he's been to conference finals and all that. Like, so it's all pick and choose and all that. But if you're a Dallas fan, you should be really happy because you have a legit chance, regardless if it's Minnesota, regardless if it's Denver, you have a chance to get to the NBA Finals. Like maybe when you got there 2 years ago, it was kind of like when Portland went there or the Hawks got there, like kind of like, I mean, it was just a one and done.
You shouldn't be. Like,
yeah,
there's a difference of getting there and feel like you belong, and then like, oh man, we exceeded expectations.
Yeah, you're happy to be there. Like,
This is a success.
It's championship. It's a championship.
I think as Mavericks Nation, like I feel like, it's fair to say like this season has been fun, but we belong in the Western Conference Finals. So like if we lose, it's okay to be upset and be like, man, we ain't get the job done. But like you really feel like that now. I mean, Luka's 25. You got Kyrie Irving, and the way everybody's playing, like you should feel like that. It's not an anomaly that you got here, and it's the second time in 3 years that you got here. So even whatever doubt you had the first time, you solidified it by getting back 2 years later. So
you're
now
building something special. You're building something really good here. You have the pieces. You have your two guys that that can take over. You have your superstar, in Luka, and you have the face of the franchise. You got Kyrie, who we have known he maybe hit the biggest shot in NBA Finals history. So he could close out games and all, and what he can do, and you could trust him with the ball in his hand. You got a great group of second tier guys. Derrick Jones is a great vet, to have and all that, and can hit. PJ has stepped up. Obviously, Gafford has stepped up. You got a rookie that you can possibly have, for the next 10 years, be that Tyson Chandler type, type of player that you just, that they're your own version of CP and Tyson, that with Luka or even Kyrie, and you can invert. That's the good part about having Kyrie and Luka is like whatever pick and roll with. Like you saw yesterday when there were 4 minutes left, Kyrie goes baseline. He trusts Lively so much that he could have went up. He probably would have went up most years, but he gave it to Lively. Lively got the and one and all that. So they have everything is settled. They even played Jaden Hardy some minutes, which I love. I was a big Jaden Hardy guy. So they're trusting the younger guys and all that in big time moments too. So everything seems lined up for Dallas to not just this year be a run for the next few years. So, if you're a Dallas fan, you should be really happy. And like I said, don't be satisfied like 2 years ago where you're like, all right, it's cool. We got to the conference finals. No, we could beat Dallas. We could beat Minnesota. And then if we get past one of these two teams, we get to the finals, we should feel comfortable that we can win a championship. So, they're in good position right now to do potentially, the greatest thing, and that is win a championship.
Yeah, and it's crazy because it's just you would think outside of like Mavs Nation, like you would think this, they're talking about the Dallas Mavericks like their window's about to close, as if the finals isn't more of like they're revving up the same way we're talking about the possibility of what Ja looks like when he gets back, and Ja and the Memphis Grizzlies, and Ant in Minnesota, and SGA and OKC, and it seems like Dallas is more like all right, their window's about to close while these windows are opening, but their superstars the same age as some of these other superstars. I know Ant's like the youngest of everyone. But before we close out, I just want to talk about the controversial call real quick. Okay, look, it was a foul, all right? Wow. It was initially a foul. It was challenged. It was reviewed. It remained a foul. And the guy up there in the booth, I forget his name, but
Steve Javy, I think. I think Steve Javy.
Yeah, Steve Javy said it was a foul. Like, and I understand. Listen, whether it's the right call or not, as fans from the outside looking in, we can always disagree with calls. But it's also one of those I, as a fan, can always acknowledge, like, if it went through every step and it was a foul, and then this guy could have an opportunity to change it, and he says the same thing, and this guy weighs his professional opinion, like, at some point, we have to acknowledge that, like, I understand we hate the refs and this and that. I understand, like, it's quick to blame the refs. These guys are professionals. I'm just saying. If 3 or 4 professional opinions of a subject matter say that was the right call, You could complain all you want as a fan, but I feel like it's invalidated at that point. The pros spoke. You don't have to listen to that. And I understand, OKC, that call, they're going to go with that for years, especially like
SGA took responsibility too. He said, I fouled him, man. And they reviewed it and they said I fouled him, so I'm cool with it.
If PJ had lost possession after SGA hit the ball, I don't think it would be a foul. But no, PJ Washington kept possession. Like, it didn't bounce out of his hand and then he got slapped in his arm and the ball goes the other way. PJ was able to keep full possession. And then once he got his arm slapped, he goes to extend to shoot the shot. And it was a legit shot attempt at that. Like, it was a shot attempt. He held on to possession so he didn't lose it and batted up, hoping that I get some BS call. Like, everything was legit. It was like the first attempt at the block wasn't a foul, but that second, after I followed through and caught your arm, it was. And everybody was acting like once you hit the ball, any type of body contact is out the window. Now, it can't be a foul, but PJ never lost possession. If he loses possession and SGA follows through and hits his arm, but it was already like he was bobbling it, he goes to try and shoot it and it goes way up like it was a bad shot attempt. I think when they go back to review, I think it's reversed. But the fact that PJ still, when he goes to follow through, the ball gets hit, he's still holding possession, following through, and when he gets hit in his hand or hit in his left arm, his follow-through arm, like, then that confirms the foul. So it's like, I understand, like, when calls like that, no matter whether you agree with it or not, when calls like that happen, like, as the team on the losing end, you have to live with that. You probably get reminded about it every year. If you don't end up going to win a championship in the next couple of years, you end up going back to that moment and saying, like, man, things could have been different from here, but instead,
think about it. PJ Washington, remember before that, where he got the dead ball foul with when he ran through. I forgot who he exactly ran through, and they got to the free throw line and they had possession. So PJ Washington was almost the GOAT of this game because they almost cost them the game, with that, and they got the free throw and then the possession. I mean, that almost cost them. So, but hey, it was a foul. It's it. We got three different. The refs called it. If the refs get it wrong, what do we have? Replay.
We have replay.
Right. Steve Javi said, yeah, he had possession of the ball. Yeah, he hit the ball, but he still had possession, didn't lose. If he lost it, then it's a different story. But he had possession. It's a foul. We got three different things that said it's foul. So.
And just remember, when it comes to replay, like, I think people forget, like, when they go to overturn or confirm this call, I think people forget the fact, like, when these refs go to watch this replay, it's still not solely their decision. They got people in their ears from the replay center. Right. So, like, there are other entities helping you review this. So it's not like Tony Brothers made a call and then the coach challenges the call, so he feels slighted. So you know what? I'm watching this from, man, you going to challenge the call that I made, so now I'm going to – no, there's people in their ear, like, and if they got the call wrong, they will force them, hey, make the right call. Like, that was the wrong call. It's okay. You don't know what's being said in their ear, but, like, it's not a Tony Brothers makes a bad call and then he's the end-all, be-all, even if it's review. If Tony Brothers gets to, I made the right call no matter what you're talking about. So I think people forget about that. Like, there are multiple steps when a play is reviewed for this play to be finalized as whether it was the right call or not. And I just think people forget that because they'll probably go back. Well, of course, Tony Brothers, if you make the right call and then you go back and confirm the call, like, why would you say you didn't make the right call? But there's a lot more into it than that. But Chris, I do appreciate you for joining here on the Bleav in Mavs. Shout out to all the Mavericks fans. We're going to the Western Conference Finals. We get to sit back today and watch Game 7, Denver versus Minnesota, as just fans of basketball and getting to see who our opponent is in the Western Conference Finals. But I do appreciate everybody for tuning in. Be well, be safe, and we will catch you later this week to preview the Western Conference Finals on another episode of Bleav in Mavs.